for this session. We'll be hitting narrator authority and bias, the power of silence, applying ideological lenses, reading against the grain, emotion as analytical data, and finally, reflexivity and exam strategy. Have your notebooks ready.
All right, Module 1, Narrator Authority and Bias. Let's look at the actual mechanics of telling. So, when you enter a story, you have to remember that you aren't encountering raw, unfiltered events. You are experiencing a highly mediated account. The absolute first question you always need to ask yourself is, who is speaking here and with what authority? You've got to evaluate the narrator as a character with an agenda. Look for specific techniques of unreliability, like, are they asserting absolute certainty but then repeatedly hedging their bets? Do you spot weird contradictions? Are there hidden class or gender hierarchies embedded in whose inner life is actually explored on the page?
You know, it's incredibly easy to be lured in by a first-person narrator's confessional warmth. It just feels so intimate. But that warmth, it brilliantly hides deep, deep bias. On the flip side, an ostensibly objective third-person stance actively guides us through highly selective focalization. So when you're structuring your exam responses, don't just identify the point of view. Anybody can do that. You need to argue how that specific structure organizes cultural power and knowledge.
Moving on to Module 2, the power of silence. Let's practice reading for gaps.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that we need to shift our gaze from the text surface directly to the margins. Textual silence is literally never an empty space. It is always a deliberate or sometimes unconscious choice that demands ethical interpretation. You've kind of got to flip your analytical approach upside down, shift your attention away from what is vividly present, and fiercely interrogate whose stories are missing. What has the author actively chosen not to contain?
And this right here is where you want to drop Gayatri Spivak into your exams. Her concept of the subaltern reminds us that some voices aren't just missing, they are structurally unheard within dominant discourse. Think of how colonial texts often render native characters as silent backdrops, right? They're physically there, sure, but they're granted zero inner life or voice. To detect these absences, notice where a text suddenly grows vague or maybe just skips perspectives entirely. These signals point directly to repressed cultural exclusions.
Module 3, Applying Ideological Lenses, Exposing Those Structures of Power.
Think of Creswell's critical frameworks almost like highly specific optical lenses. If you put on a feminist lens, you are actively questioning how women's agency is portrayed. A post-colonial lens examines cultural erasure and imperial power dynamics. A Marxist approach probes economic power, labor, and class struggles. And queer theory? That questions normative, everyday assumptions about sexuality and identity. Your main goal here is to ask which structures of power are being critiqued by the text and which are just comfortably ignored.
Let's anchor this idea with Gabrielle Griffin's crucial advice. Basically, texts are never neutral. Every single metaphor, every sudden shift in rhythm, and every highly specific word choice carries incredibly heavy ideological weight. Your job as a critic is to uncover whether the text is upholding a conventional worldview or if it's actively contesting it.
That brings us to Module 4, Reading Against the Grain, the art of resistant reading.
Most texts naturally try to herd you down a very comfortable, predetermined interpretive path. But reading against the grain, it's kind of like finding the plot holes in a movie and realizing they were left there on purpose to hide something. Instead of just passively accepting what feels natural, resistant reading exposes the inconsistencies. By directly challenging the dominant narrative, you uncover deeply suppressed meanings and hidden ideological assumptions. It's a real game changer for your analysis.
All right, Module 5, Emotion as Analytical Data. Let's talk about affective reading. Traditional academic practice often sidelines our feelings, but honestly, your physical emotional response, like a sudden flinch or a feeling of unease, is absolutely central to interpretation and rhetorical power. Try this step-by-step workshop activity for your journaling. First, slow down. Literally, take a breath. Second, notice where emotion arises. Third, write it down, record it. Fourth, identify the exact trigger. Was it a harsh shift in rhythm, a manipulative tone, a weird sensory detail? Finally, trace that trigger to a larger ideological script. You are literally turning your gut feelings into rigorous analytical data.
Finally, Module 6, Reflexivity and Exam Strategy, bringing it all together.
To really nail this in your exams, we have to talk about reflexivity. Your own cultural, social, and intellectual positions completely dictate how you read. Zena O'Leary captures this perfectly, noting that your textual engagements carry immense responsibility.
You need deep, transparent awareness about your own positionality so you avoid imposing unexamined meaning onto the text. Ask yourself, are you actually listening to perspectives different from your own?
So, the crucial point here, and this is your actionable checklist for structuring high-level argumentative exam responses, is this. If you systematically interrogate the narrator, identify what is left unsaid, apply Creswell's frameworks, read against the grain, treat your emotional responses as data, and maintain your reflexivity, well, your analysis is going to be theoretically sound and practically unstoppable.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this really provocative thought. Literature doesn't just exist in a vacuum, right? It literally requires you, the reader, to activate it. If you are a co-constructor of meaning, how do your own unexamined biases shape who gets power in the stories you read? Take this awareness into your exams and, honestly, into the world. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and best of luck with your revision. You've got this.